Hello, everyone. Welcome to Reiki Radio. I am your host, Yolanda, and today is part three, our final sit down with Bruce Taylor here on the week-long journey with him and his teachings and all that he's been sharing. So, as always, if you missed the previous episodes, you can go back in the archives and listen. On Monday, Bruce sat with us to talk about his experiences on Mount Kurama, which is in Kyoto, Japan. And he is doing a pilgrimage to Kyoto this May. If you want to join, you can register on his website, rootsoflife.org. And then on Wednesday, he spoke to us about the integration of practice into ourselves in using plant medicine. And so that also was an interesting conversation. Be sure to check it out if you missed it. And if you're interested in his practitioner training, don't forget it starts in June. And again, you can get more information on his website, rootsoflife.org. Now, as for me, I do have an upcoming class. It is called the Ultimate Healing Guide, and the Ultimate Healing Guide starts next month. There is one more day to use the coupon code to join. So if you haven't registered already, be sure that you are on my newsletter so that you have access to the coupon code for the class and register right away. And it's just good to be on the newsletter in general because you always get monthly updates about the energy of every month. But aside from that, you also get access to some free downloads and tools to support you on your path. And you always know when I have upcoming classes. So I'm always asked what I'm teaching and when. That way you will know if you are on the newsletter. Just go to my website, theenergeticalchemist.com. So today, Bruce is going to talk to us about recognizing a practice beyond the practice. And again, another juicy, interesting conversation. And we're going to talk a lot about allowing our own transformation. He talks to us about the gift of being non-attached and how to soften our minds not to be attached. So there's a lot to learn from Bruce in this as well. And as I tell you with all of these specials we've been having, if you have any questions for the guests or you just want to let them know what you enjoyed about the conversations, be sure to email them. You can reach every single one of them through their websites, and all of that information is always down in the show description. So I hope that you enjoy this conversation with Bruce, and I will see you on the other side. Okay, everyone, welcome back to our conversation with Bruce Taylor. We are in our third hour, and we've already learned so much from you, and I'm so deeply thankful for that. I mean, we learned about Mount Kurama, we learned about plant medicine. I have to say, the Mount Kurama conversation really, I was like, whoa, my mind was blown at how much came through the teachings around that.
Mhm.
Anyway, if anyone didn't hear it, go back to our first conversation with Bruce. You will learn a lot. But today, you wanted to talk to us about recognizing a practice beyond the practice. And I was like, ooh,
Yeah.
this is going to be juicy and interesting. And it's interesting because now, even as I say it, I feel like for myself, hearing that phrase, it feels like something that can only happen through direct experience because we can sometimes go to classes and learn anything and kind of stay surface with it and
Mhm.
maybe practice, but not fully into the practice. And then if something cracks and we stop trying and we surrender, then there's a lot of understanding and a shift that happens. But
Right.
what do you mean by this?
Well, what I mean by this is, if you're into yoga or Reiki or plant work or whatever, any of these modalities,
Yeah.
it's not about the time on the mat. It's not about how perfect you can hold poses or how much energy you can feel during Reiki or how profound you think you are to channel things or whatever, or the visions you have under the plants. None of that at some point, none of that matters. And indeed, it doesn't even matter from the beginning. What matters is your life. So the practice beyond the practice is your life. Like, what do you do in every step that you take? How do you engage with people? How do you engage with your external world? And there's so many things to open into this conversation here, but it's in Reiki, for instance, the in Usui Reiki Rojo, that's what I always mean by Reiki is Usui Reiki. It's because Usui Reiki Rojo specifically demands that we forget that we're even practicing Reiki.
Hmm.
All the other iterations of quote unquote Reiki, they don't demand that. They demand that you stay attached to the experience and the spectacle. And if we do that, we're missing the point. We're completely missing the point because I can't heal anybody else on this planet. I can't attune anybody to Reiki. I can't, none of that stuff makes any sense. That's all framed by my mind. It's all framed by my mind. And then further, it's framed by my belief that I have something that other people don't have.
Right.
And it becomes a trap, a very quick trap, because you can go learn something like Reiki in maybe a few hours. And if the teacher fills you with belief and spectacle and all this, well, then you're just trapped now. You're trapped in the own delusion of your practice. The real focus of Usui Reiki Roho is something called Ansen Ritsume. And Ansen Ritsume is this idea that you are living every step of your life in as peaceful of a way as you can. It's the precepts in action. The precepts are in a very logical order. It's first, I'll try not to be angry, and then I'll try not to worry. I'll do my best to try to do these things every minute of my day. And if I can succeed in doing that, then I will probably be able to feel the gratitude, the natural gratitude of life. Of course, I'll be honest and I'll be diligent in my work. And of course, I'll be loving and kind to everything because why wouldn't I be?
Right.
Right. So if I stay stuck on the experiences that I have, and everybody has profound experiences, everybody sees the supernatural. I'm not downplaying that in the slightest. It's very beautiful. But what we fail to discuss in many of these discussions, I think, in the kind of holistic world, if I see the Virgin Mary in my practice, for instance, she's just an extension of me. I'm an extension of you. You're an extension of Christ. Christ is an extension of the Buddha. It's all the same thing.
Hmm.
So if I see any extension of myself and then believe that it is an external representation of something, then I've missed the point.
Hmm.
I'm attached. I'm looking at it as a transaction now. And so that means I'm becoming further uh, lost in my own kind of delusion of the practice. And so if that's how I am on the mat, then when I go out into the external world, which is still just an expression of my own internal state, I'm going to take that same delusionary mindset and apply it to other people. Oh, but my Reiki is so powerful because in mine I channel these angels and I can give that to you, and only from my class can, okay, well, that this is what I mean. I'm suffering. This is just suffering. It's full suffering coming to the surface. So it doesn't matter your experience in your practice. It doesn't matter the time that you sit on the mat. Of course, it matters because it matters to the depth of your practice and your understanding. But what I mean is anything that you experience, if we recognize that it doesn't matter, then that means you're living closer towards every moment of your life being free and at peace.
Yeah. Well, I
You
do
know,
want to say it's interesting the points that you're bringing up because, again, I think it's something that can only be recognized, experienced through our practice. And it is very common that we will have these, like you say, not just spiritual experiences, but these experiences that seem extreme
Mhm.
because they're extraordinary. They're not, if I sit into a meditation and I have this incredible, whether it's visual sensation, whatever it may be, it seems so extraordinary because it's not what I experience, just 24 hours a day yet.
Yeah.
No. But the thing is, but the thing is I'm thinking about what my journey was. So the I forget what you keep calling it. There's something you keep calling it, but the extraordinary thing, that was really what piqued my curiosity initially, right? Like, wow, I can feel energy. I'm having all of these experiences. I'm receiving like my mind is like I'm getting all these insights. I'm perceiving things different than I have
Yes.
before. It was all just like, whoa, right? And somewhere it cracked. And then now all of a sudden here comes a lot of like repressed emotion and feeling and da 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 da. And I was like, wait, 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 this isn't fun anymore. Like,
Right.
what? Wait, what? And I think that was so I went from like fascination to very humbling, and to now these even the experiences feel normal, so to speak, right?
Mhm.
Like they're not like they're strange. It's just as like, oh, we have these abilities to go into different states. But when I go into these different states and I have these different experiences, again, it's interesting to me more so like, how is it changing me? And to your point, then, how does it help me to not attach to my anger, not
Mhm.
fixate on my worry? How does it teach me, or how are these experiences that seem so extreme help me to recognize and be more compassionate naturally? Not something I'm just saying, not something I'm forcing, not even something I'm chasing. How does all of this reconfigure us? So I want to ask you about that. Like, did you have experiences prior to coming to the understanding you have now that really were, that did seem like the, whatever you keep calling it,
The spectacle.
the spectacle? There it is.
Yeah.
Yes. So did you have the dance with the spectacle? And even that, wasn't it a teacher in some way?
Yeah. Well, how
The
long do you have?
spectacle. We
How
got
long
still
do we have
about,
to?
we got 40
I could pull out
minutes.
a list that's longer than you would care to even glance at. Yes, it happens all the time. And
Yeah.
Yolanda, you put it beautifully. And I think this is the curve of the experiential curve of learning.
Mhm.
Oh my, what's the name of it now? There's even a term in sociology for this, the Dunning-Kruger effect. When you first learn something is when you're at the height of your belief of your knowledge and at the minimum of your depth of knowledge.
Okay.
This is a legitimate studied
Yes.
thing, right? So you can think about how maybe you were when you started any of these practices. I can definitely think about how I was when I started these practices, when I
Yeah.
started Reiki and everything. I thought I was at the height of my knowledge.
Yeah.
And how did I know that? Because every time I sat down, there was some experience for me to attach to.
Hmm.
That sounded completely exceptional and extraordinary to what the norm was, to what my norm was in my life prior to these practices.
Hmm.
And then, like you said, continuation with the dance of that spectacle eventually cracked my perception of myself, perception of, and I put that in a term that sounds absolute. It's not that there's one crack. There's hopefully there's cracks after crack after crack,
Yeah.
repetitive cracks and attacks against any attempt of my mind or my uh, ethos to attach to the practice.
Yeah.
The first one, the first crack, is probably going to be the worst because it fractures, this bubble that can become kind of like our armor.
Hmm.
Like these things are very easy to learn in many ways, like neurolinguistic programming or Reiki or whatever. You can learn these things online. You can learn them. You don't even have to take the course and you'll get a certificate. I'm sure you can find people that'll just send you something and say you've done it. So,
Yeah.
so then really what are we doing? It's like we've just learned something, so we think we're at the height of our understanding. What we're not recognizing, though, is that thing that we're learning is actually trying to help us heal all the things that we're holding on to. And, maybe we're hiding behind the practice. Maybe we use the practice as like, look how powerful and crazy and amazing I am.
Right.
But actually, I'm weak and I'm scared and I'm this and I'm that or whatever inside. I don't want to look at that. So let me just keep telling the world how amazing my practice is.
Yes.
Well, hopefully, when that fractures, it fractures down to the core so that the light of the practice washes away the roots of the fear of the attachment. For me, that was health anxiety, it was actual health issues, it was all that type of stuff. And it was careers, it was a lifestyle that was not in complete resonance with me. Like all of that stuff needed to be fractured.
Mm-hmm.
And the danger in the fracturing of those moments is that we are led to a raw state of our being. And
Yeah.
that's the Dunning-Kruger effect as well. Like as time progresses, we fall down this cascade of the belief of the self and we tumble through our own ignorance. Like, wow. Like I'll give an example. I used to call myself a Reiki grandmaster. So there you go. That's the most ridiculous thing that
I'm
you can
really
say.
curious about that just as a side note, because I see that people use different languaging. And I was like, what
Mhm.
is that just specific to different lineages that they give these titles? Like, where does that come from? Do you know?
I mean, it comes from people's marketing. It comes
Oh,
from I don't know. I don't know
yeah.
where it would become. I mean, I do. I mean, there's some stories, but I don't think they're valid
Right.
enough to talk about. I think it comes
Okay.
down to marketing courses that is not honest in
Got
a
it.
way. Right?
Okay.
That's all. So, as I was cascading down the belief of myself, oh, I'm a Reiki practitioner and I meditate and I do Tai Chi and I do Qigong and I do all this type of stuff. Shield, shield, shield. In reality, I've got crippling panic attacks and health
Mm,
anxiety. I just had cancer. I have a career that I don't enjoy. I'm suffering. I'm really suffering. So that side of me is like getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And I'm putting up all these shields. I'm a grandmaster. I'm all this.
yeah.
Okay. Luckily, that was fractured for me, and the light of Daikomyo or Reiki or whatever was shown on to the actual suffering.
Yes.
And only when it's there can that be washed clean, right? So that's in the Dunning-Kruger effect. That's when then you start to actually acquire knowledge about it. You have to be broken down to your core, and then you continue on from there, right? And that's
Yeah.
when we have these statements like when you really learn a practice is the only time you really learn a practice is when you unlearn the practice.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
the paramount for, in my opinion, for Usui Reiki, it's not Mount Karama, but it's signified by what Karama represents. So the paramount would be, can you go out into, well, like you said in the last hour, could you go to the haunted house and find peace?
Right.
You know,
Right.
can I go into the height of my anxiety and find peace? That would be the paramount of Usui Reiki Roho.
I mean, can
Can
I
you go
look
to the
at the
forest and find,
world around us today and still be in my compassion? Like, I think,
right?
yeah. And so I love that you bring this all up because it hopefully will help people kind of sit with and look at what is this practice for me? What is it pointing to for me? And am I even acknowledging what it is that it may be pointing to, or am I avoiding? It's funny what you're saying because that's actually why I started the podcast. Because when I first got into this work, that's all I heard was like how incredible it was. And my initial experience was absolutely that. But then when I had my, as you say, the first crack, because yes, there are many, when there was the first one, I was like, hold on, hold on, hold on. What is happening? This was not on the brochure, right? And so I wanted to have conversations that were very honest about what the healing process is and that it isn't all the shields, as you say. And even though we may be, and that's an interesting thing too. I want to ask you about this since we're on the topic. I notice that a lot of times people have a fear of admitting what their real fears and attachments or discomforts may be because they're afraid that that would make them seem not spiritual. There's this
Yeah.
idea, really, that, there's this idea that if you do any of these practices, that you're supposed to be, I don't know, like automatically superhuman, or that you're not supposed to suffer in any way. Could you talk a little bit about like that? And for anyone who thinks they're doing it wrong because they're still suffering versus how this is helping us to recognize and transmute, be in relationship with, understand the textures of suffering.
Yeah, well, I mean, newsflash, we're all suffering. So
Yeah.
I mean, from one end of the spectrum all the way to the other. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know who would be at the most suffering on the planet, but you might think somebody like the Dalai Lama or whatever is the least suffering, but they're still in this embodiment, so they're
Right.
suffering in some way or another. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, just nobody is a Reiki master. Nobody is a if I was a master of Reiki, that would mean I wouldn't be in this body.
Hmm.
It would mean that I would just be simply Daikomyo, or I could leave my body and come back. I could do anything. I could manipulate Daikomyo. I can whatever. I could be energy. Energy does just that. It manipulates itself. It changes form all the time.
Right.
That would be a Reiki master, right? Would
Hmm.
be able to do that. So as far as I know, I can't do that. As far as every single bit of evidence in my entire life has ever shown me, I cannot do that. So the only thing I can do is recognize that I'm human, recognize that I live in the world of duality, recognize that on a daily basis, I'm sure I will get angry and I'm sure that I'll worry on a daily basis. And the only thing, if people are listening and like, wow, my teacher is so this or so advanced or whatever, I can assure you they're not. I can assure you they're not. What I can also assure you that they probably do, and that you might find comfort in listening to this, is that they probably are a little bit more adept at catching themselves in anger and worry,
Right.
right? So a little bit more adept at, instead of this thing making me angry for an hour, wow, okay, I'm only angry for 30 minutes. That's a victory of 30 minutes of peace.
Right.
That's that's a whole new universe of peace that can come up. So, I saw this. I'll give a very beautiful story about this. I was in Japan recently. I won't give too much information because I don't want to be personal on it, but with one of the monks that I work with and asking some questions to them, and I was like, yeah, well, let's stay in touch while I'm here and maybe we can have some chats or have some lunch or something. And the easiest way to stay in contact was Instagram, ironically enough. So already a monk's using Instagram. Okay, so there you go. So, and he pulls up the search on Instagram to find me, and it's just shoes and all sorts of stuff, right? Like, and I looked at it and I was like, "You're a monk, but you're also a sneakerhead. Like, what are you? What's going on?" And he's like, "Yeah, I love shoes, and I'm attached to them. I think they're cool. So whatever." So that's beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Because we live in that world of duality. It's impossible not to have these attachments, right?
Hmm.
So the question would be the spectacle again. Like, is the spectacle a shield? Is it your armor? Is it the thing that you are inflating your perceived sense of self with, so because you're actually afraid to look inside? Or is the practice something that is helping you to recognize that looking inside is actually not that bad
Hmm.
and it will actually never be anything you can't handle? I think
Yeah.
that's the beauty of the practice. You
Yeah.
know, this is the titles of the precepts, which a lot of times, most of the time, anyways, are not taught. Shofuku no iho, mambyo no reaku. This is this mystic art that invites in happiness. Shofuku no iho, and then mambyo no reaku is then you can maybe find this miraculous medicine that cures all diseases.
Right.
The precepts start with that because it's like, I remember that there is something in this embodiment and duality called happiness. True happiness is neutrality. And from neutrality, I can't possibly be sick. This is the miracle medicine.
Right. Yeah.
Nothing can affect me if I'm fully neutral. However, koyodake wa ikaruna. I know I'm going to be angry and I know I'm going to worry. So let me focus on neutrality, recognize my humility and my suffering, and try my best to not do that. Try my best to work at freeing those attachments.
Yeah. And again, I'm so glad we're having this conversation because I think probably a lot of people are taking a nice deep breath, like, oh, I'm okay. Yeah, like, but even recognizing that, it's part of the work. And I hope that people also hear what you're saying and recognizing that, the practice isn't just on our mat. I mean, it really is that integration of how we are interacting with ourselves, let alone the world, how we're interacting with ourselves moment to moment throughout the day. And again, having that ability to acknowledge ourselves in the compassion, in that softness that we always hear about Reiki also pointing to. You know, it's like it's constantly pointing us in the direction of our direction of mind, but
Yes.
also like what is our state of mind when we are in awareness of it. I mean, it's also very, I just think it's so beautiful. But I have to go back to one of the things you said because I do want to clarify and get your take on it. So when you're describing about potentially like if we were mastering energy, we would essentially be an expression of dicomio. And then
Mhm.
there is this whole new level of energetic manipulation. So the reason I want to bring that back up is because a lot of people have a thing with that word manipulation, but essentially we're always manipulating energy. I mean, even
Of
us
course.
speaking right now is a manipulation of energy.
Right.
Everything is a manipulation of mind. Like it all is. Can you talk about what your personal experience has been in this relationship to your manipulation of energy and mind and word and action? Like, how did you end up being more intentional or a lot of people go through that tug of war of even when we start having these realizations about even what's motivating our action, our word, our da 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 da. Was it hard for you to let go of the attachment to your old ways and then just
Mm.
ease into, I can do this differently?
Mm. Yeah, it's for me, it's very difficult. Yes, of course. Like in I'm thinking back like on our previous conversation, with the plant medicine, that's the friction that I was talking about.
Mm,
So it's like every time that this is how I'm interpreting it. I could be wildly incorrect here. I don't know, but I can only interpret my experience, and
yeah,
not try to bring it to speech. But to me, it seems like there's the nature of myself let's say, prior to tonight's practice. There's the Bruce that you're talking to right now.
right.
I go and I sit in my practice, and let's say that it is really difficult. Let's say that I face a lot of fears and I face a lot of anxiety and all that type of stuff. And I sit through it to the best of my ability. I recite the precepts ad nauseum if I need to try to
Yeah,
remember that hopefully we'll be less attached to anger and worry and these types of things. Like incrementally, I will get better.
right.
And I think that's the only thing we can try to do. And I can't say that there's like I wouldn't be able to point to one specific aspect of the practice because in reality, like I was saying, I mean, life is the practice, not Reiki. Life is how we practice. So we see these, like I really disagree with the idea of manifestation. Like people are always saying, like, I'm going to use the power of manifestation. I'm going to manifest these types of things. That's just greed. That's being greedy. Like if you want to manifest things, then your reality has to shift towards the realization of that thing.
Hmm.
If you want more money, for instance, then you need to become more professional. You need to change things in your life, maybe laziness, maybe the people you hang out with, maybe your proximity to whatever geography or whatever, doesn't make any difference, you know?
I'm
So
sorry. I'm just laughing because it sounds like you're saying, like, be more accountable to whatever your life expression is.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because life is showing you, I mean, everything that you see in your life is just an expression of where you are on your own internal work.
Hmm.
That's it. So I hear a lot like right now, people are like the state of politics in the world and the wars and all that type of stuff. But there's no more wars now than there ever have been. Politics is no more worse off than it ever has been. It's what are you consuming and what are you attaching to and what are you continuing? Then that becomes what you see. That's what's quote unquote manifested in your reality. If Instead of that, you get up and you get back to the grind, you get back to the work, introspective, cleaning out the interior nature of your closets, getting rid of the skeletons. Well, then the sunset tonight will be a little bit more beautiful, and the sunrise tomorrow will be a little bit more encouraging, and it won't matter who is the president. It won't matter what wars there are, because those have always been the case. These are just excuses again, like shift your own internal state. And that's what I'm saying. I can't point to one thing that does it. Reiki helps, plants help, meditation helps, cooking
Mhm.
helps, gardening helps, talking to
Yeah.
people help, travel helps, everything helps. Everything is an opportunity to find peace.
It's interesting because what you bring up is one of these things I think we don't consciously pay much attention to, but we see it again and again, like how we could all have the same experience, but it would be very different conditions that we each have within that container of experience. And so, like, it comes down to even like where you have siblings, they all grew up in the same household, but if you ask them
Mhm.
about it, they all would describe a very different experience. And I'm only saying that because, sometimes people get so like, what do you mean? Like, what's happening is happening. But
Sure, yeah.
how we experience every single day is going to be based on our own conditioning, our own perceptions, our own way of interacting with whatever the shared experience may be.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. And
Yeah.
that's just a summation of the state of your mind.
Hmm.
That's
As it
it.
all is.
As it
Right.
all is. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, as it
Absolutely.
all is. So I want to get back to this piece you said, because this is where I do think a lot of us encounter the challenge. And you said, again, I forget the exact phrase, but you'll know what I'm talking about. So you were talking about, even in the previous hour, that rubbing against, like when we come against the friction. And this is where it's a really interesting spot, especially when you hit that space of you are consciously observing yourself. And it's like you
Hmm.
do become very aware of like the angel and the devil on your shoulder, so to speak, where there's some aspect of you that says, yes, I actually don't have to be attached. I don't have to be in my anger. I can be in my peace in this moment, but I'm supposed to be mad. I'm supposed to be angry. And so I think that is a fascinating space to be in. To me, it really is. Can you talk a little bit about that, like how you personally worked through that, like where how you learned about softening, how you learned about maybe not fully detaching, but just loosening the grip a bit. What is that
Yeah.
like for you, or has it been like for you?
Well, the start of that realization for me was when I was back in the full grips of everything that I was dealing with,
Yeah.
anxiety and all that type of stuff. And, I started to notice, let's just say over the course of a few months or whatever, because there wasn't one time, it was gradual that I started to recognize this, but there would be some nights, and some mornings after these nights that maybe I slept really well, or everything, the stars aligned, maybe all the planets were in alignment for a perfect whatever.
Yeah.
And I would wake up and I'd be like, wow, I feel really good. Like, this is awesome. I feel like there's no pressure on me, or there's nothing. And I might have like 5 or 6 minutes of that. And then my old friend anxiety would come up like, oh, hey, sweetie, you're back. Yes, yes. Now I can worry about everything. Doesn't make any difference. Here we are. So now we're back. But I started to think, like, why in those 5 minutes? What was the difference? And
Yeah.
it was the nature of my mind. I had forgotten about my anxiety. I wasn't attached to it.
Yeah.
So then it became, okay, how many repetitions of that experience did I need? Let's just say 100, to really understand that it was real and not coincidence or whatever, or not a fluke. Once I fully understood that this is actually the case, and my anxiety is a choice, and that suffering is a choice, and it is, then that's when everything was like, okay, if it's a choice and if it's a choice in my mind, then I need to start working towards understanding how to soften the attachments of that mind.
Yeah.
And what can I do? Uh, what can I do? And how am I going to discover that? How am I going to discover that? And why I'm laughing is because I'm like, I don't even know how many attempts I had, how many failures I had. Like, I love this quote. It's really reassuring, and I think it was Saicho or like the founder of Zen meditation, but it's can't remember that if that's who it was, but it's a Zen master's life is one consistent mistake.
Mm.
And I'm not calling myself a Zen master in any way whatsoever. What I'm saying is we should recognize that our life is one constant, beautiful, chaotic mistake after another. Like, and if we soften that, if we smile on that, that changes everything. That changes everything because it's like, okay, I had 5 minutes where I was at peace. So why am I anxious now? Because maybe I drank a coffee. Okay, so I'm going to stop coffee and now caffeine withdrawal. And then, so
Yeah.
that's a mistake. So what am I going to try again and again and again and again and again? Now I have Reiki and I got this information to integrate plants. And now I'm seeing these deities and I'm getting this information and I'm doing great. Is that helping me to find neutrality in my mind or is it becoming another distraction? Neutrality in the mind is the only way we can find peace. And anything that walks towards neutrality should be the aim of our practice. Anything that walks towards attachment should be viewed as a red flag.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I practice Usui Reiki Rojo. Like I've said, that's the point. It's not because I have an allegiance to Japan or to my teacher. I have deep respect for my teacher and the people that I work with, of course. But if their language was around attachment, if their language was around anything like transactional, then I wouldn't practice that because it would just be another form of suffering.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the nature of that journey. One mistake after the next.
Yes. And it's interesting to hear you say, when we can recognize, say, that it's one mistake after the next, but smile at it. It reminds me so much of while we can know, everything is malleable. Oh, energy is changeable. Your mind is changeable. You like this today, you don't like it tomorrow. Again, if we really examine it, we see how changeable things are. You like this person today, you don't like them tomorrow, whatever. Everything is, I always say it's like Play-Doh, right? And I think when we can even get to that, that can be very helpful too. Like when you recognize that nothing has to be so rigid and in stone, especially your understanding, your perception, that you don't have to lock yourself into this rightness. Like, I have to be right, I have to
Mhm.
be right, I have to be right. Because in that rigidity, again, like, where do you allow that softness to occur? But also, it feels like to say, like, why not be okay with it? Why not be okay with the fact that I can change my mind? Why not
Right.
be okay with the fact that, yeah, I may have perceived something one way yesterday and now I understand it differently? Or, because even those kinds of curiosities or examinations can also lead us towards, oh, well, then I don't have to attach. I don't have to. And I know it's going to look like something different for all of us. But I guess the point is, like, what evidence do you have of your own life that shows you when you let things go, wasn't it okay? Whatever that may have been.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That's it.
Hmm.
That's such a profound question. Like, when was it ever a problem that you let something go and you were worse off?
Right. I
I
mean, it
would
might have been
bet,
uncomfortable, but
right? I would bet we would all really, really struggle to look back retrospectively on our lives and think of a moment of profound change, profound detachment, and you're like, no, I'm way worse off now than I
right.
was. I bet if it was an honest thing, like
Hmm.
really honest detachment, I would think people would be really hard pressed to find a moment
Yeah.
because you're
And,
creating more peace in your mind by doing that.
oh, 100%. I mean, it's
Yeah.
interesting. I think of I do think back on times that were so uncomfortable, especially in this work, to be quite honest. Right? Those
Hmm.
have been some of the most uncomfortable moments of my life. But then I look back and I smile on it because I'm like, wow, I don't know if I would have understood any other way. And I
Hmm.
don't know if I would have the appreciation I have now had it not been that particular experience. But more than anything, yeah, like it reminds me that what seems impossible, uncomfortable, whatever in the moment, that too shall pass, so to speak, right?
Right.
And I
Right.
think if we can remember that, be in relationship with that, it's not as much of a battle with the attachments.
Right. Right. 100%. This
Yeah.
too shall pass. Everything will pass. Our life will pass. Everything will pass. Right.
Mhm.
So to me, the only thing that is non-negotiable is mental stillness. Like if we can feel that, and that's not even the point, like people listening might think, oh, it sounds like, Bruce and Yolanda and everybody else that are in this world or whatever can have this. They just sit down in their mind. No, it's not like that. Not like that. Well, it's not like that for me, anyways. But
Yeah.
sometimes it is. Sometimes there's a little spark or a moment of stillness or whatever. And in those moments lies the universe,
Hmm.
right? In those moments lies the understanding that there actually is no need for attachment and whatever. So for me, the non-negotiable, like in my courses, the aim of how I teach everything, I hope, and I know, and I hope that it continues to become more refined as well, right? Like that's the
Hmm.
point. But that non-negotiable direction is towards stillness. Does what I'm teaching now help encourage people to find more stillness? It doesn't matter if I've interpreted it from a psychedelic experience. It doesn't matter if I've understood this thing from a Reiki self practice where I get clarity on the practice or whatever. The question then is like, wow, that's a lot of clarity. That's a beautiful understanding. But does it mean that the practice is now more still?
Mm.
If not, then it's a form of my own attachment and it needs to be let go of to
Yeah.
the best of my ability. Right. So that to me is the only line in the sand that there were, the kind of the non-negotiable, like
Right.
anything, yoga, breath work, meditation, walking, do it moment by moment to the best of our ability, step by step, breath by breath.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is also it points to the importance of our practice, whether on the mat or off, like just like a consistent, we're practicing, right? Because it also comes to mind, like you say, we can have these moments where we do experience absolute peace. I always joke, but it's a true story that the first time I recognized that I was in a state of peace, I actually freaked myself out. I thought something was wrong with me because I just had this moment of like, wait, I wasn't feeling anything extreme. And so I really like had this blip of a moment of like, oh my God, did I break something? Like, what's wrong with me?
Mhm.
Like, I'm just
Uh-huh.
feeling like it was so unfamiliar. Like, true peace was so unfamiliar that once I realized it, I was genuinely like, and then a moment later I realized what it was and I was cracking up at myself. But but to your point, we can have these moments. However, because again, this nature of mind, we could just as easily revert back to directing our mind towards the fear and worry. So
Right.
it's like this ongoing thing of not just directing the mind once, but the redirection and the examination. And then again, it's like finding that. I think about in yoga where they say find your drishti, like find
Of
that
course.
focal point. That's coming to mind because it is very easy. We could slip and then redirect back to the chaos, which I think we do a lot because we have so much access to distraction, like our
Of course.
phones, social media, this. So you could go into your meditation, find that still point, and then if your immediate next action is to jump back into the chaos, so it's interesting the mindfulness that comes into like the full spectrum of what
Mhm.
it is that we are practicing and what that looks like.
That's right. And that's the practice beyond the practice.
Ah, look at
So
us
it's
full
it's
circle.
you see? So it's meaningless if you sit down and you engage in a practice to then get off the mat and get right back to Instagram and attachment and anger and what, like whatever. And I don't mean Instagram in a negative way,
Right.
but you know what I mean? Like anything that
Yeah.
is busy in the mind, we try our best to let the stillness of the practice and let the stillness become then the way that you live your life. Anshin Ritsume. Anshin Ritsume is the point. This is the whole idea, trying to live a peaceful life if we can.
Yeah.
And with practice, like you said before, we have plasticity in our mind, right? So the Play-Doh that is our brain will eventually start to shape itself into something that naturally understands peace, because that can be a form of expression, just like anger and attachment and envy and greed and jealousy and everything toxic can be a form of our plasticity.
Yeah.
So choose. Who wouldn't choose peace? Like, nobody wants to suffer,
Yeah.
you know? I don't think so, anyways.
No, but and to your point, it's what exactly what you just said. Once I recognized what peace actually felt like, and I don't mean like absolute, like I'm not baby Buddha, but a more peaceful state than normal.
Yeah.
It became such a comfort. It became so familiar that then anything that bumped against it, I became very aware of the bump against. And that is a
Mhm.
signal for me to then come back in and evaluate like where I am and what I'm doing, what I'm processing, whatever. And I think that's the thing is we become so familiar with the chaos. We become so familiar with the discomfort that we categorize it even unconsciously as our norm. That's normal. It's
Right.
normal to be angry. It's normal to be upset and chaotic. But it is again, like we have to keep coming back to those states of peace, to those states of clarity to even be able to embrace it enough to want to sustain it. As crazy as it sounds, it's like we have to get
Right.
used to it,
Yeah.
used to a new
Or maybe even
condition.
see that it's a possibility. It's
Right.
even possible for anybody to recognize this, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all a work in progress, and whoa, what a road it is.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed. Yes,
I have
indeed.
to
And
say,
that's the only journey there is, really. That's it. That's the journey that we have in this lifetime, is to try our best to let our mind rest and make it become a peaceful, neutral environment.
right. And it
You know?
doesn't mean that we have to extract ourselves from the world, so to speak, but how do we, again, like you say, take it off the mat and still be a part of the world, but just with a different inner condition so that we
Mm,
can experience it all from a different lens and
right.
not in so much tension.
Right.
Oy. Ugh.
Yeah, absolutely.
Listen, Bruce, these 3 hours with you have been incredible. I feel like we've learned so much. I'm so thankful for everyone who said yes to this because I feel like it's just been like a deeper dive into, they feel like many classes that you all, the guests, are presenting us all with. And so I do want to ask you, before we go, is there anything that you ever, hope that students hear? Not, I mean, not whether or not they process it or whatever they do with it, they do. But is there ever anything that's just in your awareness of like, wow, if someone just heard this or someone just had exposure to this, this on top of everything else you've said, is there ever anything or that was helpful for you to hear?
Wow. Let me try to think. I mean, what comes to mind is just recognize everything is it's a function of your mind. Everything is a function of your mind, and to seek neutrality in your mind.
Yeah.
That should be the focus of everything we do in life.
Yeah.
And if hopefully people can hear that, and if you can hear the first part, to recognize that everything is a function of your mind, then maybe you can start to look at your practice from that angle of, is it furthering suffering, which is belief and spectacle and outcome and want and ego and pretense and story and all that? Or is it hopefully making things more neutral, which means nothing? It means zero. It means you have no experience. And in no experience, you have the universe.
Yeah.
So that's what I
Which I
hope.
think is a bit of a trek. And the only reason I say that is because I literally just had a conversation about neutrality yesterday with a group of people, and I don't remember the context, but still, there's this knowing that it is something I think that has to be experienced to be understood, that it's not boring. Because I think when you
Mhm.
say, when we hear to be neutral, because again, we associate so much to extremes in this realm of duality, people take that as, so does that mean I won't experience joy anymore? Does that mean I won't experience, like, what does it mean that I am neutral? Not understanding that like peace and love and all these things, they don't have to be exaggerated in order to be felt and appreciated. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden you become a robot, essentially, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, if you love something, set it free, as the
Mhm.
old adage goes. So if you love your mind, set it free to find.
Ooh, I've never heard that, Bruce. I'm going to have to meditate on that one. If you love your mind, set it free. Wow. No, I really am genuinely going to meditate on that. Um, just making a quick note of that. Wow, the information you have given us, I thank you so much. Like I
Well,
was
thank
telling you
you.
before we recorded, I had the pleasure of being able to meet you, interview you in one of the Reiki Ray summits, and that was such a fun conversation. And so I'm really thankful again that you took the time to sit and have these conversations again. I thank you so, so much. And I just want everyone to know again to work with Bruce to learn more about his work with Yusui Reiki Rojo, rootsoflife.org. You can also learn more about the pilgrimage to Kyoto in May. And
Mhm.
then also about the plant medicine and the practitioner training that's upcoming. You've got a lot going on. So,
A lot there. Well,
yeah.
it's always an honor to be back. I'm so grateful that you invited me and you thought about having me back on for this very special 3 hour interview. And I really appreciate all the work that you're doing to help shine this light to all of your listeners. So, Yolanda, thank you for having
Uh,
me here. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you all for tuning in with us. If you have any questions for Bruce, I'm just going to say email him because I will have no idea how to answer what you want to ask Bruce. Okay. So be sure to contact him. The link is down in the show description, and we will see you all very soon.
Thank you very much.
Okay, beautiful alchemist. First of all, I have to say thank you so much to Bruce Taylor for sitting down, having this extended conversation with us here on Reiki Radio. It has been a pleasure having these elongated conversations, something I've never done before, but it has been great in that we have been able to go deeper with all of our guests. So, again, if you are enjoying it, one, you can really help me and help the podcast, and it's free. Wherever you're listening, whatever podcast platform, just leave a 5-star review. It is greatly appreciated because it supports me in continuing to get these incredible guests, but it also helps other practitioners to find our show. So if you leave a 5-star review wherever you're listening, thank you in advance. If you are watching the interviews on YouTube, be sure to follow the channel, be sure to like the video, hit subscribe, and you can also watch the interviews on the Energetic Alchemist app. So if you haven't downloaded the app, be sure to go to either the Apple Store or Google Play for Androids and download the Energetic Alchemist app. You can download it for free, and there's lots of content there for you as well. So, Bruce, if you want to know more about Bruce, do not forget his website is rootsoflife.org. He has the pilgrimage coming up in May to go to Kyoto, Japan. He has his plant medicine practitioner training in June. And there are other offerings on his website that you can learn about in going there. So that is all for this week, beauties. I hope that you all have an incredible weekend. Happy full moon, and I will see you very soon. Remember to always journey in love.